I watched it. I watched the infamous third episode of the Acolyte, and it was not good. Before talking about the episode, let me just address what a f***ing idiot I am. If you watch my other Acolyte video, you know that I confused the twins' names, and in my defense, the fact that I confused the sisters' names shows just how much the characters and show didn't leave a lasting impression on me. That is my excuse. That is how I'm coping with me making an ass of myself. With that out of the way, let's talk about this episode. First off, I'm aware that the internet is blowing up with comments and videos talking about how this episode single-handedly ruined the Star Wars lore that George Lucas created, and I see where a lot of these people are coming from, but because I'm someone who only has a foot in the door, I can't definitively say that for myself. All I can do is comment on the story and the execution of that story. I just want to be transparent. The third episode is a flashback telling how the sisters got separated. Let me give a quick synopsis. Osha and May live a peaceful life with their mothers in a coven. They have reached the age where they can become full members. A ceremony is held.
We were blessed with a miracle. The gift of life.
But it gets interrupted when the Jedi arrive and wants to test the girls. May wants nothing to do with the Jedi, but Osha wants to become one. When Osha passes a test, May gets mad, locks Osha in a room, and proceeds to burn their home down. Osha is a lone survivor and leaves with the Jedi. I don't know how you're feeling about this, but I honestly didn't necessarily dislike the episode. The writing and execution is rough as hell, but the premise was interesting. This episode also retained my attention more frequently than the previous two episodes, but I think that was more out of morbid curiosity. But does that mean I think this episode is any good? Absolutely not, and we're gonna talk about it. The episode opens with the introduction of the twins, and immediately we see a stark difference between the two. May, the evil twin, is very much content with her life with her mother and the coven. However, Osha wants more. She wants to explore the galaxy. The problem with that is she's never been exposed to the world outside her coven, and she doesn't express any dislikes living with her coven. She feels whatever the story needs her to feel with no context as to why. Now that we've addressed the twins, let's address the coven. We're introduced to the girls' two mothers, the one that carried them and the one that conceived them, who happens to be the leader of the coven, and I actually kind of liked her. She was intriguing, there was a mystery about her, and I really liked the actress as well, but her character was absolutely awful to her partner. She undermined every decision regarding the girls, and I want a preference that the alien woman is the biological mother, but Anastasia makes it clear near the end of the episode that her partner's opinion doesn't matter and she will always have final say.
We must let them test the girls.
No.
We don't have a choice.
Osha wants to do it.
Osha is a child.
She is old enough to know what she wants.
I did not bring the girls into this world so we could lose them to a bunch of deranged monks.
It is not your decision. It is mine. And I've made it.
I carried them.
I created them.
What's even worse in my opinion is that the twins only address the alien as mother one or two times in the show. As for Anastasia, they address her multiple times as mother, and at the end of the episode, when shit hits the fan, the twins are shown only being concerned about one of their mothers. Can you guess which one? Now let's talk about the thread. From my understanding, the Force is everywhere and is in everything. Given how vast space is, it is possible that other species of aliens in galaxies far, far away has had some form of interactions with the Force, and due to cultural differences, it's reasonable that they would perceive it in a different manner than what the Jedi do and call it by a different name. I truly think that's what the writers were going for, but due to the story they're telling, this doesn't work. The Jedi have been around for thousands of years, and given the time period that this story is set in, to my knowledge, they are at the height of their relevancy, meaning everyone knows who and what they are and what their goal is. It also doesn't help that we know so little about the Coven's history, but what really causes the thread not to work in this setting is the fact that we have seen multiple different alien races from all corners of the galaxy address the Force as the Force. Just because this particular story is taking place 100 years before Phantom Menace is not going to give them the leniency they thought it would, especially given how long some Jedis can live. Now, as for the Coven's beliefs, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it.
Some call it a force and claim to use it. But we know the thread is not a power you wield. Pull the thread, change everything. It ties you to your destiny. It binds you to others.
The thread is not a power to wield, but Anastasia uses it constantly. During her lecture, she indirectly talks about the Jedi and implies that they're using it incorrectly, which is hypocritical because their usage of the thread is similar to how the Jedi use the Force. We see them use the thread to push and pull, which is just one of the many ways the Jedi uses the Force themselves. Not to mention, Anastasia uses the Force to control the young Padawan, but the Jedi, to my knowledge, don't use it that way when it comes to the mind. Let's move on to the Jedi. It's implied that the witches are trying to conceal themselves from the Jedi that are in the area, but the Jedi are Force sensitive, meaning they are trained to feel the Force around them at all times, so if someone uses the Force near them, they would be able to sense it. We see the witches use the thread multiple times before the Jedi arrive, and given the lecture Anastasia gives the twins, it's implied she's aware what the Jedi are capable of, so why wouldn't she instruct the Coven to not use the Force, including her kids? That's probably why Sol was creeping in the woods, because he felt the twins use the Force. Speaking of the twins, when the Jedi arrive and discover the kids, they want to test them to see if they're Force sensitive, and they're very persistent about it, but again, here's the thing. In The Phantom Menace, when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan first meet Anakin, they couldn't care less about testing him to see if he had the potential of becoming a Jedi, because by their standards, he was already too old.
The boy will not pass the Council's tests, Master. He's too old.
Anakin will become a Jedi, I promise you.
The Force is strong with him.
He is to be trained then?
No, he will not be trained.
No.
He is too old.
If you look at the twins, they look to be about the same age as Anakin, if not older. So the Jedi shouldn't and wouldn't be interested in them because they've already aged out of the desired age for recruitment. The reason why Anakin was the exception was because Qui-Gon sensed that he could be the chosen one, and it was his literal dying wish that Anakin be trained as a Jedi. While on the topic of Anakin, we might as well talk about the Force conception thing. I had to look it up because I wasn't all that sure, but it is canon that Anakin was conceived through the will of the Force.
The Force is unusually strong with him. That much is clear. Who was his father?
There was no father. I carried him, I gave birth, I raised him. I can't explain what happened.
The reason for this was because he was meant to be the Jedi's Messiah, but became their Antichrist instead due to the decisions he made along with those around him. There was a purpose for Anakin's exceptional conception, and it would impact lives throughout the galaxy generations after his death. As for the twins, Anastasia used the thread to conceive them through her partner, which technically violates her own beliefs.
Some call it a force and claim to use it. But we know the thread is not a power you wield.
My question is, what's the purpose of using this specific conception for this story? We know the reason for Anakin, which makes me wonder, did the thread persuade Anastasia to do this, or did she just do this because she simply could? If that's the case, then why hasn't she done this for other members of the Coven? I'm curious to know if other members were conceived in the same way or not. Lastly, I almost don't want to mention this, but why don't the girls look anything like their birth mother? If Anastasia used the Force to create the girls, it's a bit telling why they look more like her than they do her partner, and given how she treats her.
Osha is a child.
She is old enough to know what she wants.
I did not bring the girls into this world so we could lose them to a bunch of deranged monks.
It is not your decision. It is mine. And I've made it.
I carried them.
I created them.
I'll leave it at that. The twins take the test and fail on purpose, except for Osha, who's convinced to take the test seriously. She passes and is having to make the decision on whether or not she wants to stay or go. This is so confusing to me because it's clear that this show is trying to paint the Jedi in a negative light. However, what the hell are they doing that's bad in any of these episodes so far? Osha and her mother have a long conversation on what it means if she was to stay or go. This conversation proves that the Jedi is giving Osha the choice to stay or go. Why else have this conversation if that wasn't the case? Here's the thing, it's pretty clear the witches have a disdain for the Jedi, but Osha thinks they're good and wants to join them. I don't even know if she knew they ever existed before this. I can't recall if Osha was ever told what Jedi do, and yet she wants to be one. I just can't believe, considering how much the witches hate the Jedi, that they never expressed that hate to the girls, not once. There's so much ambiguity going on in this story, which makes it hard to not only follow, but believe. The editing to this episode is kind of weird. After Osha has a talk with her mother, Anastasia tells Osha that she'll consider letting her leave with the Jedi. So nothing is set in stone yet, but then it literally cuts to her packing, getting ready to leave.
I must discuss the situation with everyone here. We will consider your wish when we do so. I love you, Mama. I love you. Echo.
I swear I didn't edit that. That's the original clip. May's mad that Osha's leaving, and you really can't blame her given their upbringing. They're the only 2 children there, and they've grown up being told that the thread connects them with their power of one, power of many chant. However, her reaction was extreme. I can see her getting mad and making an indirect threat to the Jedi because she doesn't want them to take her sister, but she instead threatens her sister, threatening to kill her if she leaves.
I won't let you leave. You can't go. We're stuck here now. It's not up to you. You can't stop me. Yes, I can. How? I'll kill you.
Watching this scene, I can't help but suspect that May is somehow being controlled or manipulated in some sense. My first initial thought was that it was the witches, specifically her mothers. But now that I'm thinking about it, and given the direction the show is painfully forcing itself to go, clearly this flashback is being shown through the perspective of Osha, and I'm positive that we're going to get another flashback sometime down the road revealing what really happened, either through May's perspective or the Jedi's perspective. Which brings me to my theory, and I hope I'm wrong. I think what's going to wind up being revealed is that the Jedi decided that the Coven was dangerous and chose to exterminate them, and somehow used the Force on May to mind control her into setting the fire. They could have had a hand in it themselves. So could have been against the idea, went to warn the Coven, or he could have been there to retrieve Osha while he was setting the place on fire. Both explain why he was in the building. No matter which way you spin it, it's just terrible writing, and I really hope I'm wrong. But that seems to be what the story is alluding to, given how this flashback doesn't really give you any answers to the previous 2 episodes. When talking about the first 2 episodes, it pissed me off because of how terrible the writing was. But with this episode, I'm just exhausted. It's exhausting to try to make sense of the decisions being made. The idea of the murder mystery in Star Wars is intriguing, but the execution has been very poor, and the writing amateurish. And I dare say, this is kinda coming off as fan fiction to me. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but there's clearly an issue. Whatever it is, I hope the Lucasfilm company is able to get their act together because the fans, the customers, and people in general deserve good stories. Do better. I doubt I'll talk anymore about this show until maybe I'm proven right or wrong about my theory. I don't know how people do this. To all the reviewers that keep up with this stuff, I salute you. With that, let me know what you think about all this. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe!